Let's go to Yoon Kim now of Gleacher Company for a little bit more analysis on what's happening at Microsoft. Yoon, you know, when you look at the report, Microsoft 61 cents, they did beat the estimate. What do they say about the future?
Sure. In terms of the future, they have not guided yet. The call will be happening in 30 minutes, but they did put out the operating expense for fiscal year 12. And there was some fear before the call that with the expectation that they might raise give out the salary increase for all the employees to better compete against Google and Facebook, and then also the much talked about the relationship with Nokia having to spend billions of dollars. There's some fear that the operating expense for fiscal year 12 could skyrocket, but they actually guided pretty well, 3 to 5% operating expense increase for next year. So I think that kind of smooth out some of the nerves out there around the expense line.
Well, you've written that if they are able to maintain their grip on expenses, that whatever incremental sales they are able to produce, that's going to drop right to the bottom line. Is that the strategy?
Sure. So they've been putting up pretty strong numbers over the last 5 quarters, and I guess this time around the strength was not as strong as the previous 5 quarters. But regardless, it's really the Windows business that underperformed again in the quarter, and I think even if they outperformed other business segments, I don't think the stock will be up today, just because that remains the biggest overhang on the stock. The underperformance in the Windows business, obviously the tablets market cannibalizing the PC sales. And again, I want to highlight that Microsoft does have a comeback story there. They are going to release an ARM-based Windows, and once that's out, I'm sure they'll be very competitive in the tablet market.
What does that mean exactly, in this idea that they are ARM-based products? I mean, this has to do with the popularity, as you said, of tablets and mobile devices. What does that mean for Microsoft?
Sure. So basically, Microsoft has traditionally been tied heavily with the Intel chip, which actually consumes a lot of power and is not necessarily best equipped for the mobile platforms. The ARM-based chips are much had a different architecture that actually consumes the power and is much more applicable to mobile and portable devices. And obviously, they need to port over their Windows software to be able to work on that architecture. And that is a plan that they announced earlier in the year. And once they have a product out, the Windows-based ARMS product out there, they'll be very competitive in the tablet market. And they do have a comeback story. Obviously, they're going to be leveraging their Office franchise and Outlook franchise as well.
And I'm glad you mentioned the Office franchise, because I want to get your take on what's going on in the enterprise versus the retail customer. Are you seeing any increase in spending from companies? And what about the accompanying spend from the retail side?
Sure. So for Microsoft, although we all use their products every day, we use the Internet Explorer and whatnot. 75% plus of their revenue do come from the commercial and corporate side. So obviously, the overall spending environment within the corporate world remains pretty positive right now, despite some uncertainty in the economy right now, and that's translating into a very positive business for Microsoft. Again, the 25%, less than 20% of their market is directly exposed to the consumer market, and that's where they're getting that downdrift.
All right, and just stay with us, because I want to bring in Julie Hyman from our market says. Julie, you've been following this. You're all mic'd up. You're ready to go. The shares of Microsoft, they're down about 2% in after-hours trading right now. Is this because if you look at the results and you take away a certain tax benefit, they didn't really exceed the average of analyst estimates? All they did was hit the number, 56 cents a share.
Well, that seems to be part of the issue. And the other part of the issue seems to be these Windows numbers that looked disappointing. The company on the call is now saying that consumer PC demand was down pretty sharply by about 8%. The corporate PC demand was up. And the company does get the vast majority of its revenue from corporate customers and small businesses. But nonetheless, if the consumer side is weak, that's still going to represent a problem. We had a little bit of a foreshadowing of this when IDC came out with its PC shipment numbers for the first quarter, and they were down by 3.2%. As a result of that, some of the analysts pulled back their Windows forecast, but not all of them did. And so that seems to be also a source of disappointment.
Yoon Kim, do you still got to have a buy on the shares of Microsoft?
Sure. So I think everybody understands going into the call tonight that their Windows business will be weak, driven by the a much weaker consumer spend around the PC side. The corporate PC refresh and adoption of Windows 7 in the enterprise market remains pretty healthy, but obviously the consumer market is where the weakness is coming from. I have a buy rating on it because, again, the Microsoft does have a plan to combat this cannibalization coming from the tablet and the new form factors with their ARM-based architect Windows that should be released. They haven't put out a timetable out there, but once it's out there, they should be very competitive in that new market.
All right, I want to thank. All right, we got to leave it there. Yun Kim on the telephone from Gleacher and Company. Also want to thank Julie Hyman from our markets desk.